In this of the last lectures for Earth's changing climate, I'm actually going to take what I intended to have as two separate lectures and put them together. What I want to do in the end is ask some questions about how we adapt to the emerging crisis of climate change. And throughout the semester, I have essentially proposed that this is an existential threat to, in many respects, human civilization. And so the question becomes, how do we adapt? How do we make it so that we can survive and prosper in this changing world of a increasingly warmer and increasingly more unpredictable climate? And so what I want to end with is this idea of human individual adaptation. And again, I want to return to these two terms, adaptive capacity and resilience. And so, again, when we say adaptive capacity, that is our ability to moderate potential damage. At the individual level, we have to understand how our daily lives are going to be impacted by changing climate, whether that be increasing temperatures, increasing severe temperature events, drought, catastrophic flooding, storm surges, the types of storms that we're not used to having. And also, we do have to look at this, and we must always look at challenging situations for opportunities. What are the changes that we as individuals are going to identify that may move us forward? And of course, then there are the consequences. How do we, both emotionally and in actionable ways, respond to the consequences of the climate change that we have created? And so each of us has a different adaptive capacity. What we also have to examine is our resilience as individuals and as parts of communities in terms of our ability to maintain the function of those communities and organizations that we are part of. And these may be professional, these may be community, relationship-based, but all of these things work within an environment, and that environment affects us. We have to be able to adapt. How we adapt, how we choose to adapt to any given change will define our level of resilience. A couple of studies have really looked at how we can adapt. And what I would like to point out to each of you is the idea of thinking in these 6 roles. First of all, simply by being in this class, you have accomplished to some degree the first one, which is information seeking. It is important that we maintain as individuals and as parts of communities accurate and unbiased information about climate change and strategies to mitigate climate change. Science matters, and it is important that we don't get sidetracked by the politics or the misinformation that is out there. I think we also, though, have to be prepared. We have to be prepared for what we know is going to happen. And so it is important that we are aware of those potentially catastrophic events that may come our way. And for most of us living in Pennsylvania, this is going to be severe weather events. We also have to begin to build towards protection. And in that, the ability to think about how we live, how we work, how we interact, and to make sure that in our communities, all individuals have access to the protection that we need. We also have to start thinking about new ways to secure our financial and social well-being. And I use this in terms of the broad term of insurance, not just in terms of flood insurance, the standard, what we understand as insurance, but how we build into our daily practices and our planning strategies that make us resilient to those changes that may occur. Now, I would also advocate strongly for political action. Each of you has the capacity to have their voice heard. And it is important in terms of an adaptation to use that voice. One of the key ideas in terms of adaptation is not to get frozen. And I think too often people today feel like there's nothing they can do. That feeling becomes more intense when our voices are not heard. And so every time that you take political action, you give yourself the reinforcement and the resilience to see that you can make a difference. Now, I hope for none of you that the idea of migration is an option. You have the luxury of living in an area that will, by and large, not be significantly impacted in the way that some areas are. Doesn't mean that Pennsylvania is not going to suffer, but our level of suffering may not be in any way comparable to many other parts of the world and of our own country. And so I hope that none of you have to take this last step of migration related to climate change. Now, in a sense, we also have to look at how we feel about movements to adapt to climate change. And again, this is a psychological study that essentially asks people are less likely to adapt the less they feel that they can do. And I want to kind of go around this. We all are responsible. Each of us in our corporate actions have contributed to climate change. There's no way around that. We also, though, have to accept that that's part of our culture and that we can change our culture. In Pennsylvania, we don't experience much of the change. And so there is to some degree, a resistance to that movement. The other question we have to ask is, how will I see these adaptations respond in my own life? So if you kind of circle around this, what you'll notice is that we have issues of responsibility. How much do I perceive the risk? How much am I concerned about climate? Do I feel that I can make a difference? Will my actions protect me? And then, of course, what do I think the others will do? And what do I think others expect me to do? All of these things influence how we make decisions to adapt. And I want you to reflect on each of these. Think about how they can be seen in your own life. Now, the other thing I want to be very practical here is adaptations are important. And in terms of what can I do, there's a very important study that really looked at the question of if we as individuals feel that we can't do anything, a lot of things aren't going to change. But it is important to understand that there are, in fact, things that we can do that really do make a difference. One of the things I want to point out is there's also things that are often promoted that really don't make much difference. For a long time, people talked about changing light bulbs. The reality is that changing light bulbs, great, saves you a little bit of money in the house, but it doesn't make a significant difference. That's kind of a way end of the spectrum in terms of a very, very low impact on emissions and mitigation. And again, this is a mitigation issue. But if we move up through this, one of the things that we can really do is live without the transportation in an individual sense. And again, I know it's a hard thing to do, but that's an idea, for example, again, more if you live in an area that you can use public transportation. Using it makes a huge difference. The other one that really makes a difference, and again, notice that this is low impact, medium or moderate impact, and high impact. The most significant thing that you can do that is the lowest cost is to eat a plant-based diet. There's no question that at the individual level, that is the most significant thing you can do. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, is having fewer children. And so what I want to point out is that you can do things. There are things you can do to make a difference. Everything from eating less meat to thinking about family planning to not flying internationally. Each of these things makes a difference, and we can make a difference. All right, so the last thing I want to point out, your assignment for the final exam. There are a series of 4 videos that I would like you to watch, 2 of which are commentators at COP26. One is Sir David Attenborough, someone that is significantly older than even me, and one is Greta Thunberg, who is significantly younger than me and is of your generation. Each of them are commenting to the delegates at COP26, one informally, one formally. I want you to listen to what they're saying and be prepared to respond to it on the final exam. The other two are short videos that are commentators after COP26 that assess the success or failure of it. Please make sure that you watch all four of these and be prepared to discuss them during the final exam. With that, I will wish you a good final exam, and remember that on Monday night, prior to the final exam, I will be holding a review session. I will send out the Zoom link for that. Any questions that you have, and I will summarize the final exam during that time. Again, no class this week synchronously. These videos will provide an asynchronous lecture for the week.